Operations Management, Module 4, Work Measurement. As we have discussed earlier, work study contains two things: method study and work measurement. Now we are going to discuss more about work measurement. We have already discussed method study, so we are going to discuss more about work measurement. Work measurement is also called by the name time study. So the another name for work measurement is time study. Uh, Basically, work measurement means the time taken to complete a particular work or a task or a job, and which is very important. The work measurement is very important to why? Because it is essential for planning and control of operations. So without properly measuring the work, we may not be able to determine the capacity of facilities like man, money, machine, material, etc. We may not be able to determine the capacity of facilities required to complete a particular job or a task. As well as it is not possible to quote the delivery dates or able to determine the delivery dates. If you want to exactly determine the delivery dates, we need to measure the work properly. As well as in order to understand the cost involved for manufacturing a particular product, also we need to calculate the work measurement. And we are not in a position to determine the production rate as well as labor utilization and efficiency if you are not doing work measurement. And it may not be possible to introduce incentive schemes, as incentive schemes is based on the performance of the workers. So the performance of the workers has to be calculated only after identifying the work measurement, or after calculating the work measurement, after determining the time taken to complete a particular task. Then only the performance of workers can be calculated. So in order to introduce incentive schemes, we need to do the work measurement properly, as well as in order to calculate the standard cost involved in manufacturing a particular product, also we need to do the proper work measurement, and which is the standard cost need to be measured properly in order to have a proper budgetary control. So these all are the importance of work measurement. And what are the objectives of work measurement? The first one is comparing the alternative methods. There will be different methods to complete a particular work. So in order to compare different methods to complete a particular work, we can use work measurement as one technique, one method to compare different alternative methods. As well as in order to assess the correct initial manning, the manpower requirement can be planned properly if you are doing the work measurement. If you are not doing properly the work measurement, we will not be able to exactly determine the manpower requirement. As well as work measurement is needed for planning and control, realistic costing, and financial incentive schemes, as I have discussed earlier. Then in order to determine the delivery dates of goods, we have to do the proper work measurement. And then cost reduction and cost control, because if we know the exact cost involved for a particular work or a task, we need to do the work measurement, then only we can estimate the cost for doing that one. If we know the cost, only we can think about cost reduction and as well as cost control. Then in order to identify the substandard workers, like we have work measurement. By measuring the particular work, we can understand that this particular work can be completed within a particular period of time. So if any employee is taking more time than the standard time, then we can say that this particular employee is a substandard employee, so they are not performing well. So in order to identify the substandard workers or not performing workers, we need to do the work measurement properly. And in order to train the new employees in such a way that they have to complete the work within that particular period of time. So for all these things, we need to do the work measurement properly. And there are different techniques for work measurement, like time study, otherwise known as stopwatch technique. And the second one is synthesis, and third one is work sampling, and fourth one is predetermined motion in time study, PMTS, and fifth one is analytical estimating. Above this, all these five methods, time study and work sampling involves direct observation, and the remaining are data based and analytical in nature. In synthesis, time study and work sampling we will discuss in detail. So now let's look into the synthesis. Synthesis basically is a work measurement technique whereby we are estimating the time required to complete a particular task at a defined level of performance by totaling the element times taken from previous time studies. So in synthesis, what we are doing is that from the previous time studies we have conducted, so many time studies might have conducted, from that time studies we are taking the element times. So for a particular job there are different elements are there, so the same elements are being used in other jobs also. From for that jobs we have already conducted the time study. So from that particular data we are taking the information, taking that element times taken for completing that particular job. From that element times we are taking and we are totaling those element times which is required to complete this present work, what we are going to measure this one. So synthesis is basically taking the data from the previous time studies. In predetermined motion and time study, that is in case of PMTS, what we are doing is that we are establishing the times or times established for basic human motions. So we will establish the time required for basic human motions, that will be established, already established, and this time for basic human motions is taken for calculating the time taken to complete a particular task or a job at a defined level of performance. So that is known as predetermined motion and time study. The most common PMTS is methods time measurement, MTM. And analytical estimating is analytical estimating is also a work measurement technique whereby we are establishing or we are estimating the time to complete a particular job in an elements basis, that a particular job will be classified into different elements or breakdown into different elements, and this the time taken to complete carry out these elements of that particular job partially taken from the knowledge and practical experience as well as partially from the synthesis data. So both are data based. So in case of analytical estimating, we are taking partially from knowledge and practical experience and partially from synthesis data. And that's why we have mentioned this point, that saying that the synthesis, predetermined motion and time study, that is PMTS, as well as analytical estimating are data based and analytical in nature, while time study and work sampling involves direct observation. So direct observation techniques for work measurement are time study and work sampling. So we'll discuss those things in detail. Now let's look into the work measurement techniques and their applications. So the technique time study will be applicable for short cycle repetitive jobs, widely used for direct work. And the unit of measurement is centiminutes. That 1 centiminute is like 0.01 minute. So the time study is suitable for short cycle repetitive jobs. That means short period of job and a repetitive kind of jobs. We can use time study. Synthetic data, the same thing, like short cycle repetitive jobs can be for that one also we can use the synthetic data or synthesis can be used. The unit of measurement is centiminutes again. While the synthetic data or synthesis is a data based and analytical based. So we are taking the data from the previous time studies and we are establishing the time standard for the new job that we are going to measure. In work sampling, this is suitable for long cycle jobs, a job or a work which is not for a short period of time. If a job it's a long period of time, then the suitable thing is work sampling technique. And the job is not homogeneous in nature, the jobs are heterogeneous in nature, long cycle jobs, then work sampling is the suitable method. And the unit of measurement is minutes. MTM, methods time measurement, is can be used for manual operation confined to one work center. So if a particular job is involving manual operations and it's confined to a particular work center, the MTM is the best method. And the unit of measurement is TMU. 1 TMU is equal to 0.006 minutes. Analytical estimation can be used for short cycle non-repetitive kind of jobs, and the unit of measurement is minutes. So we have observed that the time study and synthesis can be used for short cycle and repetitive jobs, while analytical estimation can be used for short cycle and non-repetitive jobs. So there is no point in going for direct observation in case of non-repetitive jobs, because it will consume a lot of time, because the job is not going to be repetitive. In that case, the best method is analytical estimation. In analytical estimation, what they are taking, as we have discussed earlier, which uses partially the practical experience and the knowledge, practical knowledge and practical experience, and partially from synthesis data. So the information from the synthesis data and partially from practical knowledge is taken for analytical estimation. Time study, as as we have discussed earlier, time study is also called as work measurement. Both are used. Instead of work measurement, we can use time study, or time study can be used instead of work measurement. And according to British Standard Institute, time study has been defined as follows: like the application of techniques designed to establish the time for a qualified worker to carry out a specified job at a defined level of performance. That means the time taken to carry out a particular job at a defined level of performance for a qualified worker. That is known as time study. Now let's look into the steps in making time study, or the steps involved in time study. As we have mentioned, time study, another name is stopwatch technique. So it uses the stopwatch time to determine the correct time standard. So why? Because this stopwatch is used because it is very economical for repetitive type of work. So that is why stopwatch is being used to measure the time taken to complete a particular element of a work, or for a particular work. So following other steps taken for time study. The first step is select the work to be studied. As we have discussed, the work has to be short cycle and repetitive kind of job, then only this will be useful. So the time study can be applied for short cycle and repetitive kind of jobs. So those jobs has to be identified, and that particular job or work need to be very important for measuring. Otherwise, there is no point in wasting time to calculate the work measurement. So we have to select the work to be studied. That is the first step, and obtain and record all the information available about that particular job. Most importantly, the operator and the working condition likely to affect the time study work. So we have to collect the information related to the operator as well as the working condition has to be collected. So after selecting the work to be studied, then we have to collect, obtain and record all the information available about the particular job. Third thing is that break down the operations into elements. We have to break down the entire operations into different elements, and then an element is an instinct part of specified activity composed of one or more fundamental motions selected for convenience of observation and timing. Why we are breaking down the entire operations into elements? Because it may not be right to measure the entire work in one stretch. Rather, what we can do is that we can break down the entire operations into different elements, and we can measure these different elements. The time taken to complete the different elements can be measured separately, and that is why we are breaking down the operations into elements. And the fourth one is measure the time by means of stopwatch taken by the operator to perform the each element of that particular operation. So we have to measure the time taken by the operator to complete a particular element of that particular task by using a stopwatch. This can be either continuous method or snapback method of timing can be used. Continuous method means after one element immediately the next element and the next element, like that. Or we will calculate the time taken for completing a particular element of work first, then we will wait the second time the operator is doing the same work, and we are going to take the second element. So that is what snapback method. The fifth step is assess the operator's effective speed of work relative to the observer's concept of normal speed. This is called as performance rating. So in the fifth step, after measuring the time taken to complete a particular element of work, then we have to do the performance rating has to be done by the observer. So observer will have a concept of normal speed for completing that particular element of that particular work, and as well as assess the operator's effective speed of work relative to the observer's concept of normal speed. This is known as performance rating. So this performance rating need to be assessed. That is the fifth step. And sixth step is adjust the observed time by rating factor to obtain the normal time for each element. The sixth step is that in order to calculate the normal time, what we have to do is that observed time multiplied by rating, performance rating, divided by 100. So observed time by the rating factor to obtain the normal time for each element. So calculating the normal time is the sixth step. And then in next step, add the suitable elements to compensate for fatigue, personal needs and contingencies, etc., to give the standard time for each element. So in this one, what we have not included is that we have not included any allowance for the operator or the worker Worker needs some time for rest, some time for personal needs, some time for contingencies. These allowances need to be included in the standard time. So that has to be added to the normal time. And next step is compute allowed time for the entire job by adding elemental standard times considering the frequency of occurrence of each element. So after this one, what we have to do is that we have to compute the allowed time for the entire job by adding all the elemental standard times considering the frequency of occurrence of each element, and make a detailed job description by describing the method for which the standard time is established. And finally, test and review the standards wherever necessary. So these all are the steps in making the time study. Computation of standard time. So how can we compute the standard time? Standard time is a time allowed to an operator to carry out the specified task under specified conditions and defined level of performance. So this is the standard time is the time allowed for an operator to carry out a particular job within a specified condition, within a specified level of performance. So the various allowances are added to the normal time as applicable to get the standard time. So standard time, how we are getting the standard time, as we have discussed in the steps in time study, we have calculated the normal time. Normal time is observed time multiplied by the performance rating by 100. We will get the normal time plus the allowances given for a operator. That gives the standard time. So standard time may be defined as the amount of time required to complete a unit of work under existing working conditions using the specified method and machinery by an operator able to work in a proper manner and at a standard pace. This is known as standard time. Thus basic constituents of standard time are as follows, like elemental observed time, the first thing, and the second thing is performance rating to compensate for the difference in pace of working. Different operator will have different pace, so in order to compensate for that one, the performance rating has been taken. So we have, one is observed time. Second thing, what in order to get the normal time, what we are doing is that we have to have a performance rating in order to compensate for the differences in pace of different operators. So observed time multiplied by the performance rating by 100, we will get the normal time. So these are two things are required for normal time, plus the allowances like relaxation allowance, contingency allowance, interference allowance, policy allowance. So these all are the different elements. So these all are the constituents of standard time. Now let's look into an illustration or a problem. Assuming that the total observed time for an operation of assembling an electric switch is 1 minute. So in order to assemble an electric switch, the time taken, observed time taken for assembling that electric switch is 1 minute. If the rating, that is performance rating, is 120%, so that means the rating is more than 100%, find the normal time. So in order to calculate the normal time, we need to know the observed time as well as performance rating is required. So that is given. So first find out the normal time. Then if an allowance of 10% is allowed for the operation, determine the standard time. So two things has been asked, normal time and standard time. So we have given with observed time and performance rating is given and allowance is given. So we need to calculate the standard time and normal time. The observed time or selected time is 1 minute. That is observed time. Rating is 120%. Allowance is 10%. As we know that normal time is observed time multiplied by rating divided by 100. So that is observed time 1 minute multiplied by 120 by 100. So that gives 1.2 minutes. So the normal time is 1.2 minutes. Allowance is 10%. So 10% allowance on normal time is been given. So 1.2 multiplied by 10 by 100. So 0.12 minute is the allowance. So this is the allowance. Allowance 10% is given on normal time. 10% of the normal time is given as allowance. So allowance is 10%, that is 0.12 minute. So in order to calculate the standard time, normal time plus allowances. Normal time is 1.2 minutes and the allowance is 0.12 minutes. So the standard time is 1.32 minutes. Now let's look into the another illustration, like an operator manufactures 50 jobs in 6 hours and 30 minutes. So an operator manufactures 50 jobs in 6 hours 30 minutes. If this time includes the time for setting his machine, calculate the operator's efficiency. Standard time allowed for the job was setting a time 35 minutes, production time per piece is 8 minutes. So this is the standard time. Standard time is setting time 35 minutes and production time per piece is 8 minutes. So calculate the operator's efficiency. So operator's efficiency need to be calculated. As we know that the standard time is equal to, in this case, setup time plus the time per piece into number of pieces produced. So standard time for manufacturing 50 jobs, we have mentioned 50 jobs here. So number of pieces produced is 50 jobs and the production time per piece is 8 minutes. Time per piece is 8 minutes. So 50 into 8, first we need to calculate that one. 8 into 50 plus 35. 8 into 50 is 400 plus 35, 435 minutes. This 435, if we convert into hours, we will get 7 hours and 15 minutes. 7 hours and 15 minutes is a standard time. Efficiency of the operator can be calculated like standard time divided by actual time multiplied by 100. So standard time is 7 hours and 15 minutes. So rather we can take 435 minutes. 435 divided by 390. 390 is 6 hours and 30 minutes is the actual time. Actual time taken by the observer is 6 hours and 30 minutes. That is 390. 6 into 60, 360 plus 30, 390. So standard time 435 divided by 390 actual time into 100. So you will get 111.5. This is the operator efficiency, that is known as performance rating. Performance rating is 111.5. Now let's look into the work sampling. What is meant by work sampling? This particular technique was developed in England by L. Tippett in 1930s. Labor standard is set using output and percentage of time workers spent on task. So this is basically based on the output and percentage of time worker spends on task. Work sampling involves observing the worker at random time over a long period. So as we know that work sampling is being used for long cycle heterogeneous kind of works. Long cycle heterogeneous kind of works is being in order to calculate, in order to measure the work for long cycle jobs, heterogeneous works, we can use work sampling. What we are doing in here is in case of work sampling, the worker is being observed at random time over a long period of time. So randomly the worker is being observed. Work sampling is a technique of getting idea about utilization of machines or human beings through a large number of instantaneous observation taken at random time intervals. So large number of observations are taken at random time intervals. The machines or the human beings will be observed. And the ratio of observation of a given activity to the total number of observation approximates the percentage of time that the activity is in that state of action or inaction. For example, if you are taking for a particular kind of job, the observers observing the worker. So we have taken like 100 times we have observed, and out of 100 times we observe, that is the total number of observation. The time of the operator or the worker is inactive or in action are 40 times. 40 times he is doing the work. 60 times when the observer observed, he is not doing the work. In that case, we can say that 40% the worker is active and 60% the worker is inactive. In the same case, if he is when the observer observed, total number of observation is 100 and he observed 80%, 80 times when he observed, the worker is doing the work. In that case, we can say that 80% the worker is in action and 20% the worker is in inaction. Worker is not acting. And when the sample size is large enough, that means the number of observation is large enough and are made at random. Randomly we are taking the sample. That is why the name work sampling, because we are taking the observation at random time. So it's a kind of sampling, and this sample is large enough. If that sample size is large, that means the number of observations are large, then and the number of the observations are at random, then there is a quite high probability that this observation reflect real situation with certain error. Definitely there will be a percentage of error can be there because it's sampling, but there is a quite high probability that this observation reflect the real situation. So in order to reflect the work sampling to be reflect to a real situation, what we need to do is that increase the sample size and make the observation randomly. And thus the work sampling is based on probability, which means the extent to which an event is likely to occur. So the possibility to occur. That is what we are measuring in case of work sampling. Now let's look into the advantages and disadvantages of work sampling. Advantages are less expensive than time study because we are not spending the entire time with the operator or with the work. So which is less expensive compared to the time study. Time study, if we are going with the time study, we have to appoint an observer and we have to continuously observe the work. So compared to time study, it is less expensive. Observer needs little training because the observer need not have to understand about the work, understand about the methods of work, nothing like that. The observer is just checking whether the particular worker is working or not working, or particular machine is in action or not in action. So little training is not at all required for an observer. Just he is observing whether it is yes or no kind of things. And studies can be delayed or interrupted with little impact on results. Like in case of time study, we cannot interrupt the study, or we cannot delay the work, delay the observation. In case of work sampling, this can be delayed as well as interrupted with little impact on results. That will not impact on results, and the worker has little chance to affect the result. In case of time study, when the worker sees that a particular person is observing, he's taking the work measurement, then there is a high chance that the worker act accordingly, and the worker may affect the results. So worker will work efficiently or worker will not work at that particular situation. So the worker has an influence on the result in case of time study, while this influence will not be there in case of work sampling. That is advantage, and less intrusive. These all are the advantages of work sampling. The disadvantages are it does not divide the work elements as completely as time study. Time studies, unlike time study, we are not dividing the entire work elements into different elements of operation. So thereby we may not be able to understand the time taken for each work elements, or may not be able to properly measure the work. That is one disadvantage. And second thing, can yield biased result if the observer does not follow the random pattern. So random is very important. So if the observer is not following the random pattern, the result will be affected. The third thing is less accurate than time study. Time study is accurate method, so it is not that much accurate as compared to time study, especially when the job element times are very short. If the job elements, small elements of that particular work are very short, then this particular method will not be a suitable one. That's why this is suitable for a long cycle work and a heterogeneous kind of work. Work sampling is ideal for those kind of works. Now let's look for a typical case of in order to understand the basis of work sampling. For example, if 500 instantaneous observations taken at random intervals over a few weeks show that a lathe operator was doing productive work in 365 observations, and in the remaining 135 observation he was found idle for miscellaneous reasons. So observer has observed 500 times. Out of this 500 times, 365 times the operator was doing a productive work, and 135 observations found that he is ideal because of different reasons. Then it can be reliably taken that the operator remains ideal 135 by 100 into 100. That means 27% of time the operator was idle. That means around 73% of time he was doing the productive work. So this is the basis of work sampling. So I hope you can understand with this example how the work sampling is being done. Not only the work measurement or work study or method study is enough in order to calculate the productivity of the work. The productivity of the work is also affected by the work environment. Work environment is also having an effect on the productivity of the worker. So we need to understand the effect of working conditions on the worker productivity. That means the work environment on the worker productivity and as well as the product quality and the worker safety. So work environment has an effect on the productivity of the work as well as the product quality, and the worker safety is dependent on the work environment. That is why the work environment is very important. The factors of work environment such as like temperature, relative humidity, ventilation, lighting, noise level are all the factors in the work system design. So we have to consider all these factors in order to understand the effect of work environment on the worker productivity as well as the product quality and worker safety. So some of the factors of work environment are temperature, humidity, ventilation, lighting and noise level are the factors of work environment. So we know that the people work well when the temperature is comfortable. Typically, the most strenuous work, the lower the temperature should be. So there is a tendency that people work well with comfortable temperature. If the temperature is too hot, the worker may not be able to work properly. So they commit errors or mistakes. There is a possibility to commit mistakes. So the product quality will be affected, and they may not be working so fast, and they will not be at comfortable state. The efficiency of the worker will be affected if the temperature is not comfortable. As well as the temperature means it should not be too cold and too hot. So the proper work the temperature should be kept. Basically, the lower temperature is best for strenuous kind of work. That's why the managers is getting the AC cabins, I think so, because they are more stressed. So that may be the thing that they are having the AC cabins maybe. Excess humidity is uncomfortable for the most people and can be detrimental to some equipment. Too little humidity results in dry air and may create undesirable static charges. If the humidity is too high and too uh, it's excess, then it will be uncomfortable for the employees to work properly. So they will not have comfortable situation for working. So the humidity has to be set a minimal level, and it should be properly maintained. And it should not be too little as well as it should not be excess. Excess is a problem which will have uncomfortable, as well as too little is a kind of dry air will be there, so they will not be comfortable. So we have to keep the humidity level in a middle point. Exchanging or filtering the air can prevent the stale air caused by the poor ventilation. If ventilation is not properly done, what we have to do is that we have to filter the air. Filtering air or exchanging the air should be done properly. Inadequate lighting can lead to production mistakes and or physical discomfort such as headaches can occur. So detailed work normally needs stronger light, and suppose certain work need to be very detailed to be checked, inspected, then those kind of works needs stronger light. So we have to provide proper lighting in case of manufacturing plants. Otherwise the worker safety will be affected, worker quality, product quality will be affected, more wastage will be there. So adequate lighting is the requirement, basic requirement. Also, high noise level can distracting and can result in errors and or accidents as well as impaired hearing. The workers hearing or workers will not be properly hear things. Hearing will be affected if you are not maintaining the noise level, and this noise level will distract them from their jobs, so they will not be performing properly. So these all are the things to be considered in case of work environment. So we have to give proper lighting, proper temperature, proper humidity, and proper ventilation and noise level to be maintained properly in order to have a proper work environment. These all are the factors of work environment. That's all. Thank you.